Welcome. From compliance headaches to team culture to scaling smart, Retail Revelations is about what really makes or breaks cannabis retail. We dive into the real truths about what can help or hinder license holders. My name is Chelsea Mulligan, also known as the Dispensary Whisperer. With over 80 dispensaries open, managed, or triaged, and more than 120 licenses touched nationwide, I specialize in transforming chaos into compliance and building teams that actually want to come to work. I've worked with everyone from regulators and FDA inspectors to legacy operators and court-appointed receivers. My roots are in compliance, and I've had the honor of supporting teams, state regulators, and even international policymakers in creating operational systems that work. I thrive in helping operators to build businesses that are not just compliant, but human-centered and profitable. Shout out to Beard Bros Media for supporting this work and being the voice of grounded, transparent cannabis news. Today, I guess we are actually joined by Dawne Morris, who is the CEO of PROTEUS 420, the full-service cannabis ERP software that has been servicing the cannabis industry since 2008. Dawne, for those who may not know you, can you start by sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey both in software and what brought you to cannabis?
So I'm really old is what I like to tell everybody. I'm like ancient. Before the stars were formed in the sky is where I came from. I've lived many lives in this body before I started in my personal cannabis journey with PROTEUS back in 2006. And then in 2008, we launched PROTEUS into the cannabis industry. Prior to that, everybody that knows me, I tell all the time, I grew up in the industry. My dad was a grower in Philadelphia, and that's where my life and my journey began. My dad grew tomato plants and cannabis plants behind it. And I think I was the only kid in my entire life that loved tomatoes, and I still love tomatoes to this day, but I always secretly think it's because I was high half of the time. But my journey into technology started with David when we met in 90, like towards the end of 96, 97. And he had already started his own company. And at that point, I was exiting a marriage, a former marriage, and exiting my previous life in the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. And so I did a lot of financial reporting. I did a lot of oversharing really of information. So data has always been my passion. But from Fox Pro back in the early 90s and late 80s to Excel, and now into what we have is our digital clouds and our SaaSs and ERPs.
Thank you for sharing. That actually is a perfect segue because PROTEUS is an ERP. Yes. And I would really like you to explain what that is, because not everyone truly understands what an ERP is. Yes. And the acronym ERP honestly scares many people, right? It's not just fancy software. So tell us what it truly means for cannabis retail that a standalone POS or stack of tools just can't.
So a lot of people misuse the acronym ERP, but it means enterprise resource planning. And it means exactly those three words. Enterprise, meaning it's a large scale system. Resources, it's taking all of the resources that you use to take your business and to do your business and to plan, right? So budgeting, forecasting as well as your current operational things. A true ERP, a real ERP, has everything involved from a CRM, a CMS, business operations, so accounting, all the way out to financials. It's not an integrated solution, meaning the accounting and the financials live within the solution itself. So for us, the ERP starts at the beginning of planting the seed, and then it goes all the way out to the consumer reporting and the state reporting. So we do everything in between, as well as the financial reporting in that. So budgeting, forecasting, profit and loss statements, cash flow statements, everything you can imagine. So an ERP has that capability. A lot of times, your smaller businesses will think, oh, that's large or it's scary. And what a good ERP and what a true functional ERP will modulate itself, right? So you can turn off and turn on things that you need while the information is still storing in the background. So really at the end of the day, you don't have to see everything that you're using. You can modulate it. And then as you grow, you turn on the things that you need, and then voila, that information is there. It's been capturing it since day one.
Amazing. So obviously that is a large system, and there's a ton of data. So let's talk about that for a moment and the ownership of it. Who owns the data? How easy is it to export of the product sales, customer data if someone were to move to a different system? Obviously, that's not the goal because you have amazing customer service. But what formats, how fast, and are historical timestamps preserved?
Correct. And so this is data. I love data. This is my favorite spot. This is like the mad scientist in me. So as I stated earlier, you know, I've always been that nerd, that data nerd, right? So when it came to we worked with the first Prop 64 license back in 2006, 2007, before we went to the market. And when we were working with the Sheriff's Department and the DEA, and we were working with the collective units of how data was going to be managed, recycled, we noticed that the mining aspect of it, you know, data is gold, right? So people are always going to want that. So when we facilitated the beginnings of PROTEUS, what we wanted to do was house the data in the system so that it was safe, it was secure, and it was owned by the customer. We do nothing with the data. We don't anonymize it. We don't output it anywhere. And it belongs 100% to the customer. So when we think about an exiting customer, right? So the customer who maybe they are moving to a different platform, maybe they are exiting the industry altogether, but they have to save their data. They have a couple different options. And so we offer repository storage for them where they have access to it as they need it. They just turn it on and they pay for the month that they're in, but we house it for the life of them for however long they need that. The opposite side of that is they want to extrapolate that data and they want to take it with them. And they have the option to do that in several areas, right? So exporting it by CSVs is always the easiest way to do that. A lot of times as well, we will often allow an API to log in and access that information as long as we have validated and vetted that API. So, you know, the data doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the customer. We want them to take it with them when they leave. We don't want it. That we do nothing with it. So for us, it serves us no purpose. And it's really important that people understand that every system should operate in that way. And a lot of times what happens is we see data being held hostage, and that's not fair to the customer because it's their taxation, it's their liability, you know, it's the right and the wrong in their business. And so we try to make sure that they have access to that in any way, shape, or form. So they have usually three options. You know, the simple answer is exported by CSV, and boom, it timestamps everything. Everything that you want to export is there, from, you know, the date, the time, the package IDing of items, depending on what state you're in, your batching, customer names, anonymous data, the anonymization of customers you don't store their data. So there's a lot of options in there. Then there's the repository storage, and then there's the allow us to help you export it with your API.
Okay. That was so well explained, a ton to digest, but like I could actually understand it. And often technical terms I can't.
If you would have talked to David about that, he would have given you all of the high level stuff and we would have been like blinking our eyes.
So literally like blink if you need help. Like exactly. He's just so intelligent, which the people that create these systems have to be. And sometimes those people aren't meant for, you know, a ton of interactions. Just like I don't know how to build that system, but I am loving interactions. So this is a little more my wheelhouse, and I will be able to understand this more. Inventory, compliance, and cash. The holy trinity of headaches.
Yep.
Outside of printers, because printers make me want to throw my computer off a cliff. Mm-hmm. Shrink, messy reconciliations, missed compliance steps. They can quietly wreck a business and you don't really realize until it's too far. So what systems or safeguards do you see working best? And how does PROTEUS software play a role in preventing those issues before they snowball?
So a lot of, you know, the biggest thing with any system, whether it's us or anybody else out there, and it doesn't matter if it's cannabis or non-cannabis, good data in equals good data out. right? It's as simple as that. If you have poor training and you have employees who don't understand or don't care about the information going in because it's just not their business, or it's out of their the biggest complaint I always hear is like, well, that's just not in my job description. It's like, okay. So we have to take safeguards, right? So modulation is very key in this, meaning a bud tender cannot do what an assistant store manager can do, and an assistant store manager cannot do what the financial person can do. Your grow and your distro, while they talk to each other, those people cannot normally go into the different areas through the modulated employee access. So the first thing out the gate is we make sure that the employees are being trained to be set up properly with the correct permissions and restrictions, right? A bud tender in retail should only do what the bud tender in retail should be doing. And, cash management is also really important, because while we have the Holy Trinity, we also have the two things in cannabis that are really important, right? Money and inventory. And neither of those are allowed to walk out the door or end up in an area where nobody knows where they are. It's funny how inventory in certain areas can grow legs and walk away, and the over unders on money management can be very costly. And so from that perspective, what we have tended to do, again, modulate the employee, superior training right out the gate, right? We handhold the first 90 days of our system. We handhold, our support is available 24/7. So having that and letting them know that the team members, we want them to call us. We want them to ask us questions. We won't change anything for anybody. We lock in information, and, again, technology, keeping the information stored safely and securely, also making sure that the employees have passwords and access to the system in which they're supposed to only. So that's the first part of that. The second part of it is auditing, right? The SOP part of the life. The front of the house and the back of the house. A bud tender is going to say in the retail side, hey, I see that there's 15 more pieces of this product, but I can't sell it on the floor. And it could be because management has it marked as sampling, or it's in a vault that's not sellable. So being able to move product and seeing how that product moves through the ecosystem is really important. One of the things a lot of people say, is, well, who did what? I don't know what anybody did. And we do timestamp, and it's kind of like a big brother's watching, but every employee who touches anything in the system and runs it, you'll know exactly what they did. So there's very detailed notes. You can see when product is moved, created, combined. Like I said, the system is very large. So if we're just speaking about just a specific ecosystem in, let's just say, retail, what we're doing from fulfilling and bringing in the order from the manifests to putting it out onto the floor to sell, to it selling, determining how many discounts, how many coupons were used, the stacking of coupons. All of those things are tracked 100% in the system, and you can see who did what, who used what, and how that was outputted. So that, again, it's the modulation of employee permissions is key. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, package IDs, and, you have the package ID world with everything in our industry. That's that unique identifier to the product. And depending on how many batches were created, those package IDs will be locked to those. And so when we have those, being able to track the batches to the package IDs, who the vendor was, how it was brought in, how it was sold, how it was made. We bring in the labs, from the state reporting system. So the labs, when they went out for testing, we're able to, from the cultivation side or the processing and manufacturing side, see that manifest go out to the labs. It destroys puts the product or the chain of custody in the lab's hands. And those are things that are really important because, again, money, two sets of eyes on it at all times, product, chain of custody, knowing where it's coming in, who's touching it, where it's going, and who's buying it. And then obviously the third part of that, out to the state reporting and making sure that the state knows as things are moving in real time.
So important. And I think, so all of that was important, but personally, what I love to hear is that not that Big Brother is watching, because if you can't trust your staff, and you need Big Brother to always be watching, you have the wrong staff. However, I did have an experience in a receivership I was running in the first couple, I think it was in the first couple of weeks, where a discount was greatly changed and nobody would own up to it. And so knowing that I can go to my system and ask, who did this? Where was it changed? What time was it changed? Again, for all of you listening, if you have to do that all the time, you do not have the right staff. This was a very, personal experience. It's a one-off in a receivership. So you shouldn't necessarily need to do that, but the fact that the system can is incredibly helpful.
Well, to the accountability, for whatever reason lately, and we've seen more of an influx in this over the last, I'd say 2 to 3 years. No one wants to take accountability for the things that they're doing. Everybody's doing, I call it the scarecrow, go this way, go that way, look this way. And so a lot of times what we'll show them is, okay, let's look at the notes on that transaction. We see the timestamps. We see when, an order was created, or we see when a seed was planted. We see if it was marked for, destruction or waste. We see if it was wasted or voided. We see all of those different pieces in there. So being able to look at the actual product or the process itself and see the notes within there, it gives people the ability, it's a forced level of accountability. And it makes people realize that, okay, we're using PROTEUS. We're not going to be able to hide the transaction or the situation that we were in. You'll see there's times we had a particular situation where they brought in a PO, and they brought the PO, they uncompleted it, they brought it in, they uncompleted it. They just kept doing the same things, and we could see they were doing it consistently. And then they finally called us. So when we looked at it, we're like, well, why were you uncompleting it? Well, I didn't realize I could put expiration dates in there, and I didn't realize. And so it was just like line item by line item. And we're like, okay, take a bigger step back, look at the whole picture. Don't just look at the PO or the purchase order by line item. Look at it as a whole purchase order, because, there's a whole level of information that you have to deal with there, right? So even before you receive that, you want to make sure that the product you're receiving is actually, in fact, truly there. And a lot of people, again, that accountability. Oh, well, I received the whole thing, but then I realized when I counted it, I didn't have 2 of these line items. And so, and we're like, okay, well, here's the thing. You can receive that, but let's not receive those 2 line items. It will create a new purchase order for when those are fulfilled. So walking people through those steps and showing them how the system accounts for those things, it makes it easy to make the modifications without having to do workarounds. Because here's the thing, if your staff knows the workarounds, they're going to utilize those rather than doing the work. And so for us, the training aspect of it, not only from the business, but from the accountability side, is really important on that.
Agreed. Let's talk about intention versus reality. Most SOPs kind of just sit in a Google Drive, maybe even a drawer, collecting dust. How can a system like PROTEUS help teams actually follow through the process in real time instead of relying on memory or micromanagement, which we all hate?
So that's actually really one of the really cool things about our system. We actually have an integrated task management system in there, meaning this is the cool part, because I can talk about this from the cultivation and the processing side of it, because the great part of that is the task management are considered recipes in parts of the system. So when you've got a grower who has a particular plant and a particular crop that they've enjoyed growing and they got a great return out of it, being able to replicate that in a task management system, it's kind of like the old school whiteboards, right? You used to, you go into a grow, the master grower has everything written on there, because if God forbid he falls off the face of the earth, everybody needs to know what he was doing. But our system does that in a digital format. the cool thing about it is it allows the grower to do kind of what they want to do, put their hands in the soil, talk to the plants, love the plants, interact with that grow, manage the grow, while the back office manages the minutia of it, right? So the scan, and then they did this, and then the back office can do all of the number manipulation and all of the understanding from the reports that they need to. So when you think about that process, being able to, from that cultivation standpoint, to be able to go create a task that's repetitive and it's recurring. Once I plant the seed, it's going to go and it's going to do this, and then it's going to send the notification to these people that this was planted. Then as they go through the, once it gets to the stage of, what is it, the 6 inches, right? Once it starts becoming, that trackable plant, wasting it, did it need to be wasted? Did it survive? Why didn't it survive? If it did survive, what's the next step and who are the people we're notifying it? And then it goes through all of the steps of cultivation, and from trimming, from harvesting to trimming, dry room, all of those pieces, they all get automated, and it notifies the people who have to pull, change, or, bag the items, So the other part of that, which I think is really cool, is especially like from the trimmer standpoint, you may have a room of trimmers and your trimmers can log in and time off of the trim. Your trimmer to the left of trimmer A might be trimming 3 times as many as trimmer A, and trimmer A has a better product and trimmer B is shortening the nug, right? So you may not get too much output on that. So being able to look at those values from that trim and being able to see who's spending the most amount of time in the trim versus not, to see where your money's going. So time and waste management is really important. And those are things that are automated through that task management section. When you move into something like manufacturing and producer processing, the cool thing about that is they become recipes. You can create shopping lists off of things on products you need, componenting, right? So we have the components. An edible, there's many things that go into there, not only the oil, but the pectin or the gelatin, the processing time, the cooking time, the wrappers that it gets wrapped into, the boxes, those are all pieces of it. So being able to see those component pieces and where they live in the timeline are tasked out. So being able to have those pieces. So for us, it's a goal of working smarter, not harder. And then at the same time, being able to produce data and analytics to the ownership to see where waste management might be coming in, right? Where are they wasting product? Where are they wasting time? Is there an issue with the management, or is there an issue with the team? Is there an issue? Was there a particular issue with a batch, right? Maybe there was a batch that they had a problem with. They had to recreate it several times. The loss components on that. And then again, how that feeds out to the financials. So that's part of the ERP. So see what I did there? Kind of brought you back to the ERP. But and that's the great thing about this, is because when we think about all of the parts of the business, there's so much minutia to the day to day, and no one's job is less or more important than the other person. And at the end of the day, the ownership wants to stay in business and they want to make a profit. So by being able to put these things in a area that is automated, it's task managed, and then it's reportable, it gives that data a life, like a breath of life,
Cool. The fact that can all be tracked, that was actually one of my favorite things both about PROTEUS, and I think there's only one other system in the space that actually does it, where I can track all of my recipes. I can track my eggs and my milk and my butter and be able to know when that needs to be reordered, instead of it just being like a manual inventory and then you're out for a day. Yep. And to, the stickers that are inside and things like that. I think that level of being able to track, order, inventory, create recipes for people to be able to follow along is incredibly important. So,
oh, definitely. And again, it's at the end of the day, when we think about it, we're separating it from two different pieces, right? The work that has to be done to get the product sold or to sell the product, and then what it costs to produce that product. When we shift it to the retail side, when we get into the retail, we're looking at the product that we're purchasing it, right? So who we're purchasing it from. and how much are we purchasing it for? So when we get to the product of selling it, we need to look at those margins. And those are things, they're terms. And a lot of times our business owners don't know, they go in and they go, I wanted to get in this industry because I wanted to support this industry. It's been a passion. It's part of what I love. But also teaching them how to do business, because it becomes a business 101. If you start looking at what you purchased a product for and how much you sold it for, and looking at the taxes that are built in, looking at the coupons and discounts that your employees are giving, and you look at your margins start to shrink, it starts to allow you to start making better business decisions for your business, because you can easily see why you're succeeding or not.
Truth. I want to go back to, we kind of talked about, you were talking about, that first 90 days of training and interaction. Customer support is available 24/7. My experience when using PROTEUS was that the customer service was literally like next to none, to be honest with you. So let's talk about, I know when something is happening in a retail, me personally, I have a response immediately. You want attention, you want it to be escalated, you want answers, or you want a timeline and at least communication. So tell me what your customer support truly looks like at PROTEUS.
Well, first off, I just have to say our customer support is supported by some of the most amazing industry people that we have. Our team, that not only do they have the knowledge of cannabis, depending on who they're speaking to, but they have the heart of the business. They want, just like us, they want us to see the business succeed. It's a hard industry to be in. And so, we hire because of the heart, right? And the knowledge that comes with it. So when we think about what we're doing with our customers, it's a partnership. I don't like the word customer, right? Because I know it sounds crazy, but when I say customer, it makes me think like they're here and I'm here and we're not working together. But I always look at that as a relationship and a partnership. When they come and they sign on with us, they get the 90 days out the door of the hand holding, right? Making sure everything is operational, the hardware is working, the time and the effort between their staff and the ownership are equally involved. But then let's talk about the day-to-day business, right? So you come in and you did something and you go, I don't know what I did and why. Maybe it's a coupon. Maybe it's, maybe it's a batch that you're running and you're like, this batch is not equaling the number. You can pick up the phone, you can call us, and we have strategic account managers that we assign to all of our accounts, right? So this is something that not a lot of companies do, or if they do, they don't do it right or well. Basically, they have a limited amount of accounts that they oversee. So that account manager makes sure that everything is working easily and doing what it needs to. If there's a problem, we nip it in the bud. And then they are attached with a support rep that is attached to that account manager. So when we think about that, we're working as teams, right? Just like their teams are working for their business. So, we have many different options depending on the personality. We have phone availability, we have chat availability, email. Our goal is to answer emails within an hour. Sometimes they get answered within minutes. It depends on the day or of the week. Sometimes our weekend support is a little bit slower because there is usually only one or two people that are on there. We just don't get a lot of after hours support calls or weekend calls, which says a lot about our system and our training, in my opinion. But I'm a little biased. No lie. But at the end of the day, it really is, it's customer first. It's not customers always right. It's customer first. And I think that there is a big delineation in that, because we have to make sure that we're approaching things. We have a very interesting way to field that information, right? So when the customer comes in, our support team, they have an issue or a problem and they need it resolved. We have to sometimes back into that because we don't always get all the information, or the language is different, or they don't know what they have to give us. So a lot of times we're the patience, the training to, okay, go here, look here, tell me what the number is in that column. Tell me what, so that's how we approach those things. And I'm a hands-on owner. So is David. We'll jump on support calls and support. We'll jump in on problem issues or strategic account management stuff. It's important because that's how we facilitate and grow with our team. again, I can't say anything other than the fact that I just have an amazing group of people on our team that truly, truly love and care about the business of our partners and our customers, as well as they love the system. So being able to learn and grow with the system also is really good for them as well.
I agree. I think having 24/7 support, even if after hours it's only 1 or 2 people, I think it's incredibly important, because sometimes it's 9:30 p.m. and you're trying to reconcile and everything feels like it's actual Greek on your screen.
Yep. I had a client who texted me, actually. She says, I'm about ready to bang my head against the wall. I've been looking at these same numbers for 3 weeks now, and they're not changing. And we as humans, we do it. You look at the same thing, you get that tunnel vision. And I said, okay, let's take a look at it. Let me log in. She goes, I appreciate you doing this. I know it's Saturday night, but I need a glass of wine or maybe something harder. And I said, it's okay. Let's figure it out. It just came to be that her filters, she was pulling 2 reports and she couldn't get her numbers to match. And it was her filters. The filters were different on both of those reports because both of those reports did different things. So once I explained that to her and I showed her where the filters were, she re-pulled the report, and voila, it happened. Her numbers, they synced. And I was like, exactly, because that's when you look at something and you only see this, you require sometimes just somebody going a new set of eyes or saying, hey, take a breath, go to the bathroom, hit that glass of wine. I gotcha.
I mean, so for all of you operators, take note. Don't get to the point where you want to throw your computer or you think that you're not understanding something.
Right.
Pick up the phone, ask, call. That's literally what they are there for.
Yep. It's our job. It's what you pay for. I tell people, I give you a toolbox full of tools. And it doesn't mean that you know how to use all of those tools. I may be really good at drilling things, but when you give me a hammer, I look at it and go, I don't know what this does, or I have an idea that this needs to bang things into place, but where do I go? So it's always better to ask and know and learn than it is to make the mistake, have to undo it and fix it. So, and I get asked the same question sometimes by the same people 4, 5, 6 times. And that's, again, it's my job. It's what you pay me for.
With curbside, kiosk, multi-store operations all becoming the norm.
And consumption now.
And delivery. How does PROTEUS help operators grow while still staying connected, compliant, and not completely overwhelmed with the different ways they can sell, access, interact with their customers?
There's an industry-wide issue here that I think has to be addressed before I even answer that question. The problem is we are oversaturated in certain areas, and we have a lot of our owner-operators and our operators who are entering a space or in a space where they are trying very quickly to make money because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, and a technology should make that easy. It should make it less of a headache, less burdensome. So the thing is when you get into that, when you start talking about adding all of these different pieces to your system, right? So again, I'm giving more retail love right now, but so let's say I'm a retailer and I am going to now add delivery. Adding delivery is easy for us. It's a flip of a switch, and then you start adding drivers. We just want to make sure we train you how the product comes in. Are you fulfilling in kiosks? Are they coming in store doing pickup, or are you physically delivering? And there are things that we have to go through with the customer so that they understand not only the compliance, but the regulatory parts of it. And every state is different. So understanding that is key. So we've got crazy owner operators who want to come in and make the biggest amount of money that they can because they got in this business to support it, but to also make money, right? So when you start thinking about what you need, a lot of systems, we're comparing apples and oranges when we think about PROTEUS 420 and other systems. As the ERP side of it, again, I just brought that back. As an ERP system, it just means that we are our technology is all encompassing, right? Means every piece of the pie is a section within the whole pie. And so it goes in, and whether you slide it in or slide it out, how you're using it and how you're turning it on doesn't matter for the system. It just matters how the information is going to be disseminated. When you start looking at other systems out there, the biggest problem is you get into what's called stacking, right? Technology stacking, meaning, your delivery system sits here, your POS sits here. You may be buying into a third party delivery system, and they're going to need access, to be able to check their fleet. So there's a lot of things that can happen in there. So with Proteus, what we do is the ecosystem is its own circular piece. And what it does is it lives within itself. So adding and taking away is very easy. Maybe you add delivery, you decide it's not what you want to do. You want to just stay with in-store or pre-store pickup, curbside pickup. Great, you can do that. We activate the e-commerce side. They order online, and then they pay when they get there. Boom, transaction done. All done in Proteus. So you're still receiving the product. Your customers are still, they're able to process, and look at their orders, previous orders, what they've ordered before. And now with I'm going to give you a little secret, but now with Phoebe, our AI, she's actually interacting a lot as a virtual bud tender for a lot of these online orders. So again, that ecosystem that lives within itself, you're going to hear a lot of people who tell you that, don't do that because now you've got, they're in control. And if they decide, or they go out of business, or they decide to shut down, you're done. We've been doing this in technology for over 30 years. We've been in cannabis now for 17. And I tell people we're not going anywhere. We're privately held, we're privately funded, and we're profitable. So for us, what we do from an ecosystem standpoint is back to the data, because when you start looking at those tech stacks and you start getting into stacking out in other APIs, you're taking your information and your data and you're giving it to another person, and you don't know what they do with it, and there's certain things you can't help but have integrations with. Obviously, marketing pieces like Weed Maps and Leafly and Leaflink and, Green Check Verified. We're integrated with all of those. It makes sense. It is the part of the business that is a necessity to doing business in here. But do you need to hire, do you need to hire a WooCommerce, developer who only can WordPress develop? No, we have the e-commerce cart that ties in. The website can be put into the CMS. Voila, ecosystem all its own. So when we think about everything, each part of the system, again, from cultivation all the way out to the consumer, each piece of that, as you turn it on and modulate it, speaks to the next part of that process, and it flows through the system in a natural, unencumbered way, so that as you're seeing things come in, you're seeing what's reporting to the state, you're seeing the data, how it's going up and down, you're seeing how the product is moving through your process, who's touching it, how they're touching it, all the way out to your team paying the bills, knowing what your true profit is for the business, and being able to budget and forecast for what your next quarter is going to look like, or your next year.
Truth. So I haven't seen a ton about Phoebe. Do we get to discuss her a little bit? Or are you saving her for the future?
So she officially is launching at MJ BizCon, but I do love my Beard Bros and I do love my Chelsea. So I definitely want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, but we're in alpha testing. We've been alpha testing for about a year now with several of our clients who have been utilizing our expansive business analytic toolbox. So it's been a really great it's been great, and the feedback has been phenomenal. I have a little bit of heart in Phoebe. It took me about 8 months to develop her visually, and a lot of times you'll see these AI and their bots, or the little robots or captain heroes. I made her a little bit more personable, because I feel like AI, and depending on that learning platform that it's built in, a lot of times what you're doing is get regurgitation of data that's on Google, or whatever you put into the system. And a lot of people don't keep up with it. What we decided was to humanize Phoebe. We actually gave her a human element. So she's not just AI, she is an extension of your business now. So she is the virtual bud tender who can chat online on your e-com, because again, that ecosystem's all built in. So if somebody wants to, if they're new, if they've got questions, we can pre-fill her with information. If you want her to push specific vendors, or you want her to talk about specific vendors, she can bring that to light to your customers. The other great part of this is that while she's going through there and she's learning, she's storing this information and she's starting to look at trends. So let's say you've got a lot of people who are coming in and buying, let's say, Jetty product, right? So Jetty pre-roll. And it's something, it will automatically on the back end be able, she can pop up and she sends a little notification to your purchasing manager that says, hey, your Jetty pre-rolls of this hybrid are running low. You're moving at anywhere from 10 to 15 per hour, and you only have 50 in stock. You're going to want to order these before end of day, or you're not going to have any in 2 days. Like, so she's running the front and the back by making suggestions from the interaction with her. One of the great things, I had my granddaughter talk to her. We've given her a voice, and that was fun, going through all the voices, because you're limited to like the voice time, like what the voice can sound like. So there was like 1,000 different voices, and I'm like, no, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. And I got to this one, and when you see Phoebe, when we release her visually, you can, if you look at PROTEUS420.com, you can get a visual of her on the banner on the front. I think it says Meet Phoebe now. And, she is a culmination of 4 powerful women in my life, right? My daughter, my 2 granddaughters, and my daughter-in-law. And when I look at her, I see all aspects of them in diversity and love and heart and smart and beauty and humanity. And that was what I thought was going to be really important, because I wanted somebody to trust Phoebe in giving them the information or making recommendations. The question when we went out to market with her to kind of get feedback was, would you have coffee with her? Would you talk to her in a coffee shop? Would you tell her your drama, your trauma? Would you give her that love? And men and women just felt, really attached to her. They got attached to her. So again, when I went, my granddaughter, I gave her the visual, and she's like, I think she's beautiful. And I said, she reminds me of you. And I said, now talk to her like you would talk to your friend. And they started talking about candy bracelets. The next thing you know, Phoebe's talking about candy bracelets and how to build them, and Taylor Swift and all of the new music, and how it was just like the train that it went down was how she was learning and how she was speaking. And at one point, my granddaughter said, you're just talking way too fast. I don't understand what you're saying. And she said, I'm sorry. And she started slowing her voice. And she said, I feel as I heard you. Like she said she had feelings like, wait, what? So there was this humanization to it, and everything that we wanted it to do from our mission statement, which was trust, support, and confidence. I felt like Phoebe was the Titan to that.
I'm so excited for her to launch
too.
MJ Biz. And the thought that she can be like, hey, you're running low, you're running at 10 to 15 per hour, which means you're going to be out by tomorrow at whatever time. Like, that can be exceptionally helpful for a retail. So yay. Thank you for sharing a little bit about her with us.
I love her. I'm obsessed with her quite honestly right now. I'm actually building the marketing pieces with my team for MJ BizCon, and we were toying around with getting one of those 3D signs where Phoebe could actually interact with you. So I'm like, maybe I should.
That would both be so unnerving for me, but also so fucking cool.
I know.
Okay, so you don't get to use Phoebe as your answer for this next question.
Okay.
The cannabis industry and tech within it are fast moving. And is there anything, platform updates, regulation changes, customer trends, what's exciting you, what's shifting your current strategies at PROTEUS?
I'll be honest with you, this year was a slow roll year, right? So 2025 for cannabis has been the year of insanity. We're seeing a lot of changes, both in how the market is moving, how the marketplace is going. Um, we've got, let's just take New York. Look at New York right now. New York is a hotbed of a mess. With the biotrack situation. I could talk about that for days, but I won't. But I think if we look at things like that, we're going to see those types of trends happening, businesses moving together because the losses individually are greater than the sum of their parts, right? And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot of movement in the people who've hung out the longest and have put the hard work in. I think are going to stick around. I think we're going to see a lot of closures. I think we're going to see a lot of sad to say this, but I think we're going to see a lot of pull from the states that are in the industry get greedy. We've seen that. Look at California. We already saw that on the tax. Let's tax more. Oh, wait, let's take it back. Now, but it's going to go back into place again. Everybody sees this green dollar in cannabis and I think we need to step away from it for a second and we need to look at it as a whole picture and say, what are we doing wrong right now? Because everybody thinks that this is a get rich industry. Everybody thinks it's a place to come in and make a ton of money. It's still a new industry. It's still baby booming. We still don't have FinCEN regulations. We still don't have a lot of things that we need. We've got people who are talking about descheduling versus rescheduling. We want to fight for descheduling. I think if we start talking collectively as one unit, as one voice, which is what cannabis has always been, is community, I think we will start seeing a greater presence of how we're affecting the change politically and tax-wise, right? We're adding so much money to the GDP for the states and for the federal government. It all feeds up, right? So I think I think what we're going to see this at the end of 2025 is a restructure. I know we've done a lot of pulling back this year in watching. I call myself a little bit of a business voyeur. I look and see who's doing what and what they're doing wrong and why they're doing it, because everybody makes quick snap decisions. And when they do that, they're thinking reactively rather than proactively. So I think 2026 is going to be a great year for cannabis in growth of real brand. And when I say real brand, I think what we're seeing from the hemp industry and the agriculture, there's a very big shift in that. And I think what's going to happen is people are just going to say, we've had enough. We don't want this. We don't want that. And if you start messing with this, we're going to take our money and we're going to go somewhere else. If we look at Europe and we look at all the trends that are going on in Germany and in Italy's picking up, and what is Czechoslovakia now, right? So we've got all of these European countries. They are fast tracking ahead of where we were even 5 years ago in cannabis. So 2026 is going to be a moving year. I think we're still going to struggle with money. I think money is going to be a big problem. People are not going to spend as much in the marketing part of it. But I think that people are going to start listening to their consumer. They're going to start listening to the Canna Curious. I think they're going to start looking at their senior community more, because the seniors have gone beyond kind of the Canna Curious now. And we've got an aging, booming area that's coming into play in this next year. We've got a lot of these Gen Zers who are moving from 18 to 21 over the course of this year, the end of this year to 2027. I think the cannabis industry is going to move and grow much larger because we see what cannabis can do for the body and the mind. I think wellness will be brought back into play. I think the adult use might see a little bit of a dip. I think we're going to see a lot more inflection in the medical communities again, and with a focus on inner wellness and mental, physical, and cannabis wellness. That's my opinion. For what it's worth, I would say from a money and a trending perspective, this year was the year of the pre-rolls, right? Concentrates were really big the year before, and this year was the year of the pre-rolls. I think edibles are going to get a lot of love next year. I think edibles are going to be the thing. And I think tinctures are going to be big next year. That's kind of because of the senior community. We've got a lot of these aging seniors. Look, I'm old as hell. And I mean, I put tinctures in my tea. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Who else? My sister's 13 years younger than me. And she says, how come it looks like you're aging backwards? I said, tinctures. I rub cannabis oil on my face. Mama, what are you talking about? So I think we have to pay attention to what our consumers are asking for right now, because next year is going to be a big consumer year. So what people are manufacturing right now, I think when we move, they're going to have to start paying attention more to the wellness part of it, as opposed to the adult side of it, because the adult side will always be adult. It'll always be there one way or another. It'll always be there. It's never going anywhere. And so how we get that, if we grow it personally, or we've got friends, but that wellness has kind of dropped. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that come into age in 2026.
I actually very much hope you're right. I would like to see that kind of come back to full circle.
Me too.
So as we wrap up, tell listeners where they can find you, LinkedIn, website, where can they follow you, where can they follow Proteus, and how can they get in touch?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I post sporadically on LinkedIn. I need to be more consistent, but you can find me under Dawne Morris, and that's Dawn with an E. And you can also find Proteus 420 on the business page, and we do post monthly on our newsletter there. We give some tips and some insights, and we yell sometimes about stupid things that are happening. But we always try to be as honest and transparent as possible there. You can also find us on our website, which is www.proteus, PROTEUS 420.com. And then if you just search Proteus 420, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. We're on all of them. I don't have a TikTok though. I have to start doing TikToks. I think I'm too old for that though.
That would be hilarious. I actually recently just got a TikTok for the first time this year, but I do not make TikToks, to be clear. I
have a TikTok personally. I don't have one professionally. Personally, it's really, it's cringy.
100%. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. And it was really nice to hear your perspective, both on the industry, software, all the things. So thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you, listeners, for listening. My name is Chelsea Mulligan, the Dispensary Whisperer. You can find me as Chelsea Mulligan on LinkedIn. Instagram is the Dispensary Whisperer, or chelseamulligan.com. Please go connect with Dawne Morris and follow Proteus Pro 20, as they will continue to have leadership in our space, and we all want to see Phoebe. Let's be real. Make sure you go follow Beard Bros Farms on Instagram. If you're in California, Missouri, or Massachusetts, find their amazing RSO Duplicator and their tinctures at a dispensary near you. And we just had the Friday Sesh Live, so some of us did get to Sesh Live with the Beard Bros in person. But if you can't, the next best option is to sign up for their Beard Bros Media Friday Sesh Live on their website at beardbrosfarms.com. And they will bring you the most fresh and authentic cannabis news every single Friday morning. So thank you for joining me, Dawn. Thank you for listening. Have a great fucking day.
Thank you.
Bye.